everybody else. Everybody's excited. It doesn't get old, as we always say. I think our team is excited, and that's important. I think after late night Sunday, gathering the information and getting back to practice yesterday, we're going to play a very good team. I've seen some of the 3 seeds play, or 14 seeds, I should say, and I promise you Bucknell is as good as, better than any of them. I look at them on tape, and I saw them against 2 teams that we've played. I watched them against Maryland, who they were 15 up at halftime at Maryland. I watched them against North Carolina, who they were up early and within striking range the entire game. And they've got a couple of things that create problems. They've got 3 seniors. One's Player of the Year this year, one was Player of the Year last year. And those guys in Thomas and Falland are very good players. And then their point guard, Brown, averages 15 points. All 3 of them are 1,000-point scorers. All 3 of them are phenomenal 3-point shooters. All 3 of them have played in 300 or started in 300-plus games. So it's a very experienced team with probably 8 of their 9 guys can shoot threes. Center is a guy that's also pretty good defensively, and I think it's a team that I look at them, they're as good or better than Middle Tennessee, but similar, except they're bigger. Their bigger guys can shoot it. So as far as we go, we're all healthy, and no issues there, and we had a great practice yesterday, and hopefully we'll have another good one today, practice tomorrow, then we're taking off. Questions?
Tom, when you look at Bucknell on film, who do you equate them to most when you're trying to explain to your players to understand their style?
You know, it's kind of a unique. I can explain it to a couple of them. I can use Middle Tennessee because of the number of guys that can shoot the ball. But most of our players weren't here for that, so I don't use that. I just talk to them about, you know, when they got beat by 2 by Maryland, that's when Maryland had the forward was still playing, and they played awfully well. I mean, they had them down 50-35 at halftime, and it looked worse than that. So I really have looked at those 2 games because the unique part of this team is they don't really change much. You know, they don't run a ton of things offensively. Their fast break is very good. Their 3-point shooting is beyond range, and couple guys that shoot it like the kid from Wisconsin, where he's going to shoot it any place on the floor, and that is probably the toughest thing right now. Jaron will have as tough a matchup as any, going against Thomas, who's a senior, who's played a lot, 6'7", 6'8". He can beat you off the dribble, and he can beat you in the post, and he can beat you with a 3, and he can beat you with a long 3. They run a unique fast break that they trail a guy, but where we trail a guy to the 3-point line, they trail a guy about 5 feet behind the 3-point line, and he just catches and shoots it. So it's going to be some different adjustments for us in that respect.
Is that, can you just expound on that? Is that 3-point guy that trails, is that the 4 the same as it is?
Yeah,
with
that's Thomas.
Yeah. Thomas.
Yeah.
When you look at your team right now, you move Miles into the 4 and Jaron into the 5 a little bit in the Big Ten tournament. Is that something that you can do more of in this one, or is it something at this point in the season where you can't really make as many tweaks?
Yeah, you know, we can do that. We can do that, but this team's pretty physical inside. I think what we are looking to get back to a little bit more is Nick has had a great 4 or 5 days. Maybe the best since he's been here. And we've got to establish him in that little post. And I think he got frustrated. I think we got a little frustrated when he was getting doubled. He may get doubled now. He's been better the last 2 weeks at dealing with it, but I think he's comfortable now. We've worked on it every single day. So when he gets doubled, we can play out of it. But, you know, there's no question that double teaming affected his offense and his defense, and then we pull him out, and you know, we can play Jaron at the 3 and some things, and Miles at the 4, even keeping the same lineup in there. I think our size and offensive rebounding would be one of our strengths against them. But, you know, we're not going to make wholesale changes, but we could make some of those adjustments, yeah.
Tom, Miles came back for a lot of reasons. One of them, obviously, to try to make a run in this tournament. Assess where he is with his game and mentally with this season now, you know, coming down the stretch.
Well, I think everybody's a little mentally better. I think the break was good for us. I think, you know, I think we've wrapped our arms around all the things that we've gone through this year. And we've spent a lot of time last week talking about a lot of things. And so I think he's mentally in a great position. I think he's, you know, as we keep saying to him all year long, you know, just be more aggressive. He's got to be more aggressive. But, you know, it's hard to argue his numbers to a certain extent, and yet, you know, I've made no bones about it that I want him to be more aggressive. And that's kind of what we've worked on. I think he is a little better now at shuffle dribbling into that post and making some plays and burying some people, and hopefully we'll do a little bit more of that too. But Miles is in a good position with his head. I think you get to this time of year and, you know, everybody gets excited about playing, but everybody also, you know, like our seniors, you start thinking the end is near, and so you got to deal with all those things. And I think in Miles' case, who knows when the end will be, but you know, I think he's handled everything pretty well. I really do.
Tom, last year you came into this thing, I think all three of your guys have played in the tournament before. How much different do you expect it to be for them having gone through that weekend last year?
Well, it's funny. I think it'll help. I do think it'll help. You know, I think last year, you know, we were playing very desperate because, you know, some had us in the tournament, some said we had to win a game. Who knows, after looking at this weekend and how everything went, who knows what it takes or what it doesn't take to get into the tournament. But I thought we played against Miami very desperately, and I think we played pretty well against Kansas most of that game. And is that going to help us a little bit? Yeah, you know, but this team here, those guys have all played in this tournament. Last year they played West Virginia to a 6-point game. This is as experienced of a team as we'll have played. I mean, more like Purdue, you know, except they've got more depth than Purdue. So I think anytime you get some tournament experience, it's better than it was. You know, now we're starting to play Xavier a little bit more, and he doesn't have any. So we got the 2 freshmen, we got the 4 sophomores, and you know, with McQuaid and Kenny, you know, we need those 2 guys, and they've got some experience. But as we know, you know, the year before when they were hurt and had an average year, so experience-wise, they're probably better than we are. I'm hoping, though, that the experience we got last year will really help us.
Since late last April through summer, fall, you hear from these guys all the time, we're playing for a national championship. That's our ultimate goal. You know, everything else is important too, but this is why they're here. This is why the season is being played. Do you feel like from them they're at this point now where it's no more room for error now? This is it. Time is kind of here to.
You know, I don't think there's been a lot of room for error. You know, it's funny that, I mean, I guess I have had to defend them, not from you guys, from maybe the general public, you know, that we act like, you know, here's Carolina, what are they, a 2 or 3 seed? What is it, 2 seed, you know, with 10 losses, you know, and it's almost like nobody thinks nothing of it, you know. We've given a lot of credit to different conferences. And I think we've done a very poor job in our league. And I say this, I blame our coaches, including myself. I blame our office a little bit. I mean, we have been dealt with some cards that weren't good, but we got 4 teams in the top 17, 3 in the top 10. And that makes for a pretty good conference. For Nebraska not to get in, you know, because a shot against Kansas went in at the buzzer or not, that has hurt all of us. And what it does, and what I'm getting to in this question, is we've kind of defended how we've been all year. You know, we've played maybe not the toughest schedule in the Big Ten, but we've played through the toughest situation as any team in the Big Ten. So if we talk about our team and, you know, playing with emotion and also with energy and also with things on their plate. This team has done an incredible job and will never get the credit they deserve because it's an unmeasurable on what they've done. But I think they've, you know, hey, we played okay against Michigan first half. We didn't play as good the second half, but shots didn't fall. A couple shots fall, we make a layup, they don't bank in a three. Is it a different game and are you feeling different? Probably. And so I can't worry about that. I'm disappointed in some of our fans because I think they've gone after our guys like we are 29-4. And I'm not going to apologize for being 29-4. And like I said, I actually give credit to you guys because that's not been an issue with you guys for the most part. But I think it's so wrong, and I think all these other teams are in the same boat. You know, everybody, the perfect world isn't here anymore. You know, there's too much noise out there. I told you that about Twitter 5 years ago. It's tripled, and so everybody, I mean everybody, has been up and down from Arizona to Villanova to Duke to Carolina. I mean, think having 10 losses and you're still in the 2 seed, you know, that's amazing. And I'm not saying not deserving, but everybody's going through the same thing. So I'd say that the desperation part has to be there. That's what the tournament's all about. And if our guys don't have that, that means they're too young to figure it out yet, and I don't see that happening. But you also got to play good. You got to make shots. At the end of the day, you got to do those two things. As average as we were the second half defensively for that game, we were still pretty good. But offensively, I didn't think we made some shots that I think we need to make.
We talk a lot about Miles being more aggressive. You're twice the team when Cassius is more aggressive. Where is he at this point?
You know,
how are you feeling about that?
I mean, that's the other thing. You know, Cassius probably had an 8-game stretch where he was as good as any point guard in the Big Ten, maybe in the country. You know, making shots, making plays, better defensively, and he didn't play as well. You know, in a game or two. Like I said, I know some pretty big name teams out there that were moving their point guards at the end of the year and putting other guys at the point. I mean, everybody's got those issues, and you know, I think the one thing that I will say, as I look at my team once in a while, we're still pretty young, and we get caught up in the Duke Carolina stuff. Duke Kentucky, they're still pretty young and have had their own issues. So I think Cassius is very important to this team. I mean, anytime you have a quarterback, he's important to a team. And but I think we have a lot of parts, and they all got to play well if we're going to make a run. Josh got to make shots. You know, we got to get the ball into Nick better. Miles got to be a little more aggressive. But hell, they won 29 games and doing it in a pretty good way. And the games we lost, it wasn't like we weren't in those games. So I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing, only maybe shoot a little better and maybe turn it over a little less, which we've done a better job of that. I think we forget about the good things we've done. The turnovers have come down a little bit. The free throw shooting's gone up a lot. So those are the things that I think are going to be important in the tournament. We're still pretty good defensively.
Tom, 2 questions for you. First, you've had some seasons that were very difficult simply because of the players you had to endure. Then they come along with this season, probably your best group of kids top to bottom, but I would suspect one of your most difficult seasons because of off-court stuff, not with their problems. How proud are you away from basketball of how these 15 kids have handled the noise?
Well, that's the problem, you know. I sat there a lot of nights and thought about everything that was going on, and I kind of tried to be 20 again. And I figured that out very quickly, that I couldn't do that, neither could you, so I know what you're laughing at. But, you know, I know how things bothered me. I know I dealt with them. I can't imagine how I would have done that at 20. So proud. No matter what happens, I'm going to be proud of this team. disappointed that things got to the point where they escalated to that level. I am. But it was, sometimes you have control of things and sometimes you don't. But these guys are going to deserve the respect of every Spartan fan for what they have done and what they're doing. And let's hope we don't catch fire, because if we do, they could put themselves in an elite level by themselves.
And my follow-up, for this team to reach what it's capable of a Final Four, when you're making shots, that's great, but when they're not, they're settling too much. How much do you need them to be aggressive and attack the rim?
Well, that's what the first thing I said today. You know, we got to get the ball inside to Nick more, and he's got to respond, which you know, he's had some great days here lately, and you know, I think we got to get Jaron the ball down there a little bit more. You know, I do think we've settled a few times, although some of those shots we missed in the last game, man, I want Cassius and Jaron taking those all day long. So that's the catch-22 about it. We're still not taking a million threes. It's not like that we're living and dying with the threes. I think the key for us is, do we defend well enough, that we rebound well enough, that we get our fast break going, and that's where we score some buckets. And then in the half court, we've got to get back into Nick a little bit more than we have.
Tom, you mentioned playing Xavier a little bit more. What have you seen from him down the stretch of the season, and what's your advice to him preparing for the tournament for the first time?
Xavier is maybe my most unique kid of all the kids, because I didn't expect what I gotten out of him. All the things that he's dealt with, he's been unbelievable, including when we're thinking about redshirting him. You know, then he didn't, and the way he's handled being on the scout team, I think he's realized it's benefited him a lot. But he has one of those intangibles. He's got a couple. He's still a pretty intelligent player, one of my top 2 or 3, but he's tougher than nails, and that has helped him. Going against Nick every day, Gavin, has helped him. And I think what he has a little bit is he has the surest hands in America. He understands defense and how to guard things. He's in here watching more film because he's trying to emulate that team he's playing against, and he almost never plays on that other team in practice, and yet he picks things up, which is really really good. And I think he fits in with this team so well. They all have great respect for him, and you know, he's got his family kind of here, and guys go over there a lot. They spend time, and I think he has done as good a job as anybody of handling all the things he's had to handle, and still performing, getting better each day. And I think he's going to be not a good player here. I think he's going to be a great player, and I hope some of that comes this weekend. I think you're going to see a little bit more of X.
Tom, obviously the majority of your team wasn't here for the Middle Tennessee State game, but
I was
going to say, but to what extent can you use it as a teaching moment, and also for the guys that were here, just talking to the young players about how every game?
I think the second part of your question is more important than the first, because when you're a parent, a coach, a boss, and you're telling somebody something, it doesn't have the same impact as a peer telling you it. And that's what I've told our veterans. And yet I don't want to harp on something that happened 2 years ago, other than to learn that this is what happens. Don't believe the 14, 15, 16. If I was a 16 seed, first number 1 seed, and I played a 16, I mean, we all know it's going to happen sooner or later. It's going to happen, and I think there's to be the same paranoia. So I don't really look at it that way with this team, except to let them know that I kind of stayed more in the present. If you can have Maryland down 15 at halftime at Maryland, and have Carolina down early and close game most of the way, I think that speaks more volumes than even the Middle Tennessee. I don't think this team has the ego, although I didn't think the one 2 years ago did either. But I don't think this team has an ego issue where they're thinking they're better than everybody. So I haven't harped on that. It's been mentioned the first night. It's been mentioned about a lot of teams in a lot of the brackets. For me, I just told them this is what you got to look out for. But I've kind of stuck to the present and and looked at their 20, I think they're 20-2 in the last 22 games. They won their tournament by 30 and 31 points. You know, I don't care who you are, it's hard to do that in a conference tournament. So when I say this team has got 3,000 point scores and is really good, they're really good. I mean that.
Tom, obviously from the start it was championship or bust or Final Four or bust, and this is your best chance in years to get that second national title. All of that all year long, expectations. Do you think it ever became a burden, forgetting the other stuff, but just the basketball expectations for either for you or your team, a burden at all?
You know, Bob, it probably did. I mean, when people are disappointed in 29 wins, I'm sure it probably did. But you said something that I don't want to harbor on, and I'm not going to harbor on it, but belabor it, but you aren't forgetting the other stuff. And so it's so hard for me to balance that, you know. I said that in a couple of those games early in the middle of January or end of January. I said, you know, I didn't think we were playing as well. Well, it's because of this, because of this, because of this. That's been the biggest challenge for me. But I think that's why I want to make sure our fans that matter to me appreciate what they've done and understand that they've done something pretty special. And you know what? If we don't get to a Final Four or that ultimate goal, it's going to be disappointing to me. It'll be disappointing to them. But it's not going to define me, and it's not going to define them. It might in some people's eyes, but it won't in mine. This team has done a lot of things, and they've given me, I can't imagine, as Hondo kind of said it earlier, I can't imagine not having this kind of team to go through what we've gone through. They saved me, and I appreciate that. But if I could answer that, I'd say I think, you know, a little bit of that pressure has probably weighed on them, but it's just hard to differentiate because the other one's been bigger in ways, and I don't know how to put the two together. So hopefully we're moving on the best we can from the other, and we're trying to focus in on what we've got to focus in on. And if there was ever a time when a week off might have done a team good, maybe it was us to kind of just spend some time together, talk about it, and refocus in on, you know, what we got to do and what we got to accomplish, and try to put all the distractions away. And that's kind of what we've done. And I feel good about it. I feel like it was a good week for us, even though a little nervous about the rust, but I'm also feeling good about what we did.
We've got time for a couple more.
Coach, so you're seeing these experts, prognosticators, picking Michigan State to go all the way, national champs, or even just Final Four. What's going through your mind when you see a lot of the experts kind of putting your name out there?
God, I hope they're right. You know, I don't know how they would know because they're not here every day, or they're not at other places every day. But I think, you know, everybody has an opinion, and everybody, you know, I think for a lot of those guys, they've watched a lot of games, and they probably didn't, you know, necessarily poll all the fan bases, because I think the fan bases see the warts, but I think as they go around the country, they see everybody's warts. And I think it's a privilege. I don't look at that as more pressure, you know. But when I say I'm concerned with the first game, we're going to win the weekend because that's what we do here. But you can't win the weekend unless you win the first game, and I'm not trying to make it bigger than it is. If you saw them on film, you'd say, wow, is that a 14 seed team? And so I'm trying to just say thanks to the guys that think that much of us, and not a burden. And I don't think anybody's going to be shooting for us any differently. You know, I shouldn't motivate Bucknell. I mean, we've been in the top 2, 3, 4, 5 in the country the whole year. So I don't worry about that. I just worry about playing up to our expectations, and if they want to get credit, playing up to their expectations.
I've talked a lot about the improvements this team has made. You know, there's been some incremental things. At one point it was not defending a three-pointer arc. They've changed it, turned the ball over, they've changed it. How do you get them to put that all together for the course of this tournament?
Yeah, and that's probably the million-dollar question. Can we do everything? Can we get a couple guys shooting it well at the same time? The free throw shooting was one other one that we made significant improvement on over the summer compared to where we were. So, you know, what I talked to our guys about, and what I did, went to San Antonio the other night and on a recruiting trip, and I looked at about 8 films on the way down and back, and I kind of looked at us at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, and what I figured out is there's been times we've played really, really well. And so I try to tell them we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We just have to, you know, figure out what got us doing this well, what got us doing this well. Ball movement was one. Little more aggressiveness on defense was one. Our running game. So I had my video guy break that down and show these different times in the North Carolina game. Maybe the game against Notre Dame, then maybe the game against Maryland in the middle of the year, and Indiana, and then, you know, some games late, and try to look at, you know, the differences. And so maybe some of it is over the stress and worried about the pressures of things, and so we try to talk about that. Like I said, I had a great week with them, just spending time going over film and looking at different things, and that'll be the million-dollar question, you know, can we get them to do all those things consistently? But some years you go in saying, we have to do this better than we've ever done it. I look at it as, we've already done this. Each part of those we've done well. We had a 6 turnover game. We had an 8 turnover game. You know, we've done that well. We've had a game where we've shot. I mean, I think I don't know where we are now, but we were number 1, or we were in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive efficiencies. I'm not sure that ever happened here. You know, the shot blocking is something that's been special. All those little things. What I don't think we've done as good enough job of, and I don't know, what do we end up rebounding-wise in the country? Top 2. Top 2 in the country, and I don't think we're doing that as well as we need to do it. I think we're going to get Jaron more involved in that. Nick's done a good job. I think even Miles can get more involved in that. But we're still number 2 in the country, and I'm complaining about it. I sound like a fan. But I just honestly believe that the good thing I got going in the tournament is I don't have to come up with something that we've never done before. I just have to remember what we did, how we did it, and make sure we do it again.
Hey, Tom, I guess with the group is young, you know, and they made a small run in the tournament last year, but when expectations are this high and they kind of set those expectations, is it hard to focus one game at a time, especially in the first couple rounds?
You know, I don't think so. I think I preach a lot during the season about one and done time. You know, and when you go to that tournament in Portland, you know, I said we have to use this tournament that if you don't win at the end of the year, when we were playing those last 2 games against, I think, Illinois and Wisconsin, I said, in a way, this is one and done time. If we lose, we're not going to win it outright. So I tried to pick and choose little areas like that to put some pressure on these guys, to see how they'd handle it, and see what they did, and really prepare them for what they're going to be in for this week. Because you are right. I mean, we are awfully young and inexperienced with the number of guys that are playing the number of minutes and who's been through this tournament. And yeah, Tom has, and Gab has, but they're not playing the minutes they were playing. So with the guys that are playing, for some of them, it's, you know, I didn't look back to see how many Cash played in the Miami game, for example, or, you know, how many Nick played. I mean, that was the game that he fouled the guy in the first 2 seconds on the jump ball, so he probably didn't play a lot of minutes in that game. So I think playing-wise in the tournament, they're very inexperienced. But I think they played enough big games, and I think they learned how to win. That's why the PK80 was important to Miles, or to me, because you have to learn how to get through 3 games and not make many mistakes. And we did that in that tournament. We played very well in all 3. And so that's what we're trying to recapture again.
Bob's got the last one.
We've talked about, and you've talked about, you know, for 29 and 14 being picked at a bit and downgraded a little bit but doesn't a tiny part of you like that to a certain degree as opposed to being built up into something larger, whether it's getting the chip or whatever it is part of that good?
Yeah, you know, with a real young team and young and talented, but you know, your talent level is compared to who? I mean, if you compare it to, you know, again, if you were picking and you looked at the #1 seeds right now, you'd say Xavier, junior, senior, Villanova, junior, senior, Kansas, a lot of junior, seniors, Virginia, a lot of juniors. So, and some of them more experienced than these guys had. So, you know, the only thing I'd say to that, Bob, is that, you know, when you're young and inexperienced, you're a little more fragile in what you hear and what you see and how people react. And so I don't want to use the chip. I don't want to go in there and say everybody thinks you're, you know, what I would say, not good enough, or you got this problem, or you got that problem, or, you know, I mean, I use Miles because he's easy to use. You know, he has gotten better. His assists are better. His turnovers are better. His defense is better. He's getting guarded different too. I mean, you know, last year nobody knew. You know, you think they knew Miles Bridges, but they didn't really know Miles Bridges. And now they prepare a little different, but we also got more players around him. And so for him to average the same amount of points, just about the same amount of rebounds and more assists and better defense, you know, better with the ball, I think he's made progress. But like everybody, you want that second year to be better than the first year. And sometimes it's not. I don't think that's all him. I think that's the fact that we have a better team around him. And but this is a team that has wanted to please this community more than any team I think I've had. Now back with Mateen and them, you know, there wasn't the money ball like it is now. There wasn't the, you know, there was no Twitter, there was no this, there was no that. This team has embraced that stuff. You know, when I'm talking to Jack, or when I'm talking to you, or when I'm talking to just about anybody, you know, and I'm never at those Moneyball games. I'm never around in the summer as far as being with the players at events, and everybody just bragged how much they did. So this community means a lot to them, and that's why the other issues that we've had is maybe hits home a little more than some teams when those things don't matter as much. So, yeah, you know, I defend them a little bit because